Hello everybody, thanks for watching this video today. My name is David, I'm a life coach. I make these videos in hopes to help you guys heal from your traumas. And the best way to do that, one way, besides talking, is understand it. What's going on with you? What's going on with them? What is your experience? What is that? What's the truth, the reality of it? So that's why I make these videos, and I do a weekly question and answer video. I suggest all of you who don't watch that to tune in and ask questions and learn about your trauma and your experience. I got a question last week. I answered it in the question and answer video, but I wanted to elaborate more in a video, give it more time. The question is from Emma, who is from Sweden. She says, how do you know if someone is borderline personality disorder or if it's just complex post-traumatic stress disorder, BPD or CPTSD? I'm making this video because I know a lot of you are questioning this. If we have people in our lives that have personality disorders, growing up with, having relationships with, friends and stuff like this, it causes us massive self-doubt, and it causes us to question ourselves, and we want to know, and we are willing, right, to say, I have a personality disorder. Am I the one who is borderline or a narcissist or sociopath or histrionic, things like this? It's something I've dealt with. I know a lot of you are dealing with this. I don't know, Emma, if you're watching this, if you are asking about yourself or someone else. I'm going to talk about both. Both these things, which are disorders, are similar in expression, and they're very commonly misdiagnosed, very much so. Borderline personality disorder is very commonly misdiagnosed as bipolar depression, manic depression, bipolar illness, and people with CPTSD are very commonly misdiagnosed as having borderline, especially a while ago. Now it's becoming more, doctors, therapists in the psychology field are becoming more aware of what this is. CPTSD is a form of PTSD, okay? And one thing I want to be clear on right now is we don't self-diagnose. We don't diagnose other people, but we don't self-diagnose. It can cause a ton of problems. Like, for one, not fixing it. What's really wrong with you? So we go to a doctor, we go to a therapist, a licensed mental health practitioner that can diagnose, so you can know if you have it or not. That's the only way to know. Okay? I want to be clear on that. So today we're going to talk about how is it expressed, right? If this is someone else in your life that you're wondering, I want you to know that the title doesn't matter. Don't let that affect your decisions and stuff like this, okay? It doesn't matter what their label, their diagnosis is. It doesn't. I'm not going to sit here and tell you if they're diagnosed with personality disorder, that's it, bye, see ya. And if they're not, keep working. You know, I'm not going to do that. What really only matters is their behaviors and how it makes you feel. That's what matters, and that's the problem. So in relationships, we have emotional problems. So those are the biggest. Those are the ones that need to be fixed immediately. And it doesn't feel good. Okay? If it doesn't feel good, we need to fix it. You don't always leave it up to somebody else, especially a borderline. It matters how you feel. That's what's important, not these titles, not these diagnoses. If someone's hurting you and abusing you, it must stop. I don't care what their title is, their diagnosis, what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Got to stop. Okay? Okay. So let's talk about each one real quick. CPTSD develops in response to exposure to an extremely traumatic series of events in a context in which the individual perceives little or no chance of escape, particularly prolonged or repetitive. Okay? I'm going to use an example later, and it's going to be just that example. And this is important to remember. It's a response to exposure to traumatic series of events that's where you feel like you can't escape. That's prolonged or repetitive. Okay? CPTSD, along with PTSD symptoms, have difficulty controlling emotion, lots of anger, and distrust in others. Okay? That's also borderline, isn't it? And you know, these are two totally different disorders in the fact that we have a stress disorder, and we have a personality disorder. And people can have both. Because that's why Emma said just. Are they BPD or just CPT? Very common for people with BPD to have CPTSD. Okay? A big factor, not has to, but a big factor is trauma in childhood. Could be causing PTSD or CPTSD in that borderline. Not always. Borderline also is a pre-exposed condition. Someone could be much more susceptible to borderline than someone else. Then you mix in some childhood trauma and neglect, things like this, and they develop borderline. And you could have more of that and not develop borderline. BPD is a mental illness characterized by the instability in mood, behavior, and functioning. Self-perception is skewed, splitting about people, black and white. You'll see them love you, hate you, like you, can't stand you. And impulsivity, okay? Impulsivity, very important to remember. Personality disorder becomes who you are, lacking awareness and willing to change. Two words, very important to remember, okay, with borderline, with personality disorders. Rigid and pervasive. Rigid, no flex, no change, no bend, just break. Always like this. These patterns that repeat and repeat and repeat without even instigation. Everything's fine. Why are you causing problems? What are you doing? So I use an example. I think this is a good example. I hope this helps you understand the personality disorder. So there's obsessive compulsive disorder. All of you guys know that. I think it's the most common misused term in psychology. Everybody seems to be somewhat OCD and stuff like this. I don't like it. It's not okay. Obsessive and compulsive thoughts and behaviors and actions will control your life and ruin you. For someone to say, "Oh, I'm just clean. That's my OCD," and stuff like that. Yeah. I can't wait for the day where mental health is taken seriously. So we have OCD, and then there's a personality disorder called obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So we have OCD, OCPD. Okay? The person with OCD can see their problems. They can acknowledge it. They understand it. Controls their life. They don't like it. They want to change it. They're more susceptible to changing it. I have a problem. Oh, this is what I need to do. More willing to do it. More willing to heal. More chances of healing. Where OCPD, the personality disorder, they don't think they have much of a problem. Maybe none at all. It's okay. It's a way of life. It's how I live, and it's how you should live. Is that person rigid? Is that pervasive in all areas of their life? Are they willing to change? No, not a problem. Personality disorder is almost just like, hey, we're different. You're like that, I'm like this. So when we want people to get better, to heal from their personality disorder, all you're really doing is saying, change your personality. And they're saying, why? I don't want to. Works out for me just fine. Even though it doesn't. And we get confused and believe that BS and say, oh, why are they happy now? There's a very distinct criteria for borderline personality disorder. You have to have 5 out of 9 traits. Okay? It's prevalent, it's insidious, and it's subversive. Personality disorders. So I'm just going to go over the 9 traits very quickly. I'm not even going to read them all or anything. Just real quick. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. Now this can be real or perceived. I finally got that huge job I wanted. Now I'm making tons of money and I can do whatever I want in my life. You're going to leave me. You don't need me. No, honey. This is great for both of us. Let's do what we want to do. You're going to leave me. A pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. Now, someone with CPTSD may have done this for a moment, a relationship, too. The borderline, you can see them doing this now, not just in their life, which they'll tell you. Oh yeah, I dated. I was married for a month. you know. And I hate them. And I had a great therapist, and then they hurt me, and I hate them. They're bad. I'm trying to get them arrested. I mean, just identity disturbance, unstable self-image or sense of self. This can come out as personal shame and public shame. I'm going to get onto that at the end, towards the end. Recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behavior. Now, in the question and answer video I made yesterday, I talked about how I have had CPTSD. There was a moment in my life where I had suicidal thoughts. Once. It was the absolute worst time. Now, I've had 2 really bad, unstable relationships. I've also had very nice, beautiful, loving relationships that lasted, that ended healthy, or they're still going. I don't have a pattern of this. So if you notice a pattern of unstable, not have you had one, 2, a pattern. Do you see that? Impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. So, myself again, when I had CPTSD, I don't move around a lot. The last place I lived in was 8 years. I keep jobs for years. I've lost 1 job in my entire life, and it wasn't even something I did. I was wrongly accused, but I'm willing to admit I got fired, okay, from a job before. But I stick with jobs for years. Where the borderline might have a job for a month, 6 months, 2 years, and they'll always have reasons why. It's always somebody did something wrong to them and did this and that. Now, this isn't always, okay? This is 5 out of 9. So I know a lot of borderlines will obsess, and they can obsess in their work, and that might be all they can do, but they might be able to do that and keep a job for 10 years. Typically, they aren't doing much else. They can't manage much else. That's it. They're obsessed in this. Impulsivity comes out in moving, jobs, and relationships. How stable or unstable are these? Is this now? Is this recently? Is this once other time before? Or is this a pattern? Is this pervasive? Okay. Recurrent suicidal behavior, I talked about that. I had suicidal feelings during the worst time of my life. Okay, it was the worst time. It was a 10-year relationship, massively abused. I think this person literally tried to kill me, and when they left, I was so traumatized that I didn't know what to do. I couldn't think of my future. I wanted to. I tried to. What am I going to do? I don't know what I can eat. I don't know what I'm capable of. Oh, suicide. Thoughts aren't you. Okay, you can't control this. And I'm like, no, I don't want to kill myself. I didn't feel it. You know, but it was there. It's thoughts, and I can tell somebody that, and I'm not sitting there saying, yeah, I think about it now too, for no reason. It just comes in my head. I've been like this my whole life. I tried to commit suicide. I got scars. This also happens with self-sabotaging or self-mutilation. That's a pretty good, clear sign that you might even have borderline personality disorder. Cutting, things like this. I know people that would rip their hair out of their head, borderlines. I know borderlines that sit there and twist their hair, and next day you come and there's an entire bald spot. I knew a borderline that picked every single thing on his body constantly. I mean, it was like blood always running down his legs and stuff. Like, what are you doing? Affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. That's where it's the most common. Emotionally instability, affect, I'm going to get into that. Chronic feelings of emptiness. Chronic. Not I just feel, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been feeling so empty inside. I've never felt like this in my life. No, I feel empty inside. I don't know who I am. I've always felt like this. Or I felt like this many times in my life. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. Well, PTSD, trauma, reactions can be anger, and BPD are very angry. Okay. One of the biggest things I've noticed though is rage. A borderline meltdown and rage. Pervasive. Remember? All the time. Little things. Been doing this forever. I remember at my worst, I had somebody abusing me, and dude, it was in my home, and I did not know what to do. This person wouldn't leave. I didn't live with them. if I wanted them to leave, they wouldn't leave. They would damage my stuff, attack me, and I just didn't ever call the police. So that's another part that is similar, right? Shared trait. That's why you need 5 out of 9 to have BPD. That's why you guys that have 1 or 2 of these don't have BPD, okay? Transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. So dissociation, I'm not going to get totally into that, okay? It's a safety mechanism that we might do when things get too intense. Borderlines can't handle very much things. A lot of things are intense. They tend to dissociate a lot. Someone with CPTSD may dissociate. They may have dissociated during the trauma, and then later with flashbacks, triggers. But it's not something that we do as much. You can measure it, maybe by the day. Borderlines tend to have dissociated a lot during their childhood or life, or they tend to do it still a lot. So, CPTSD typically are victims of abuse. I don't even say typically. It is. CPTSD is prolonged exposure from emotional trauma, typically, okay? But BPD typically are abusers. And I know that there are borderlines that watch these videos, and I know that you're going to tell me I don't abuse. That's not true, David. How dare you say something like that? But they do, okay? Not all. I can't ever claim that, and I don't want to, and I'm not going to try to make this disorder any worse than it is. I don't need to. It's pretty bad. I feel sorry for people who have it, okay? But there's a real lack of self-awareness. Huge, okay? And a lot of abusers aren't even realizing that half of their abuse is even abuse, okay? That's not that big of a deal. That's no big deal. Whatever. Minimize and all this stuff. They aren't aware. Lots of anger and a lack of moral values. There's another difference between someone who just has CPTSD, who may have compromised their moral values and starts to gain it back, but lives true to that, tries to. And then there's a BPD who just says it, who shows that they don't have much moral value because they lie, they cheat, they disrespect people, they massively disrespect themselves, okay? And massive impulsivity, pattern of impulsivity, of changing jobs and relationships, moving. But one of the biggest things is abuse. I said borderlines abuse, typically, in CPTSD that just have that are victims of abuse. The big difference here is that abuse is either wrong or not wrong. For most abusers, because we may have abused somebody on accident, call them a bad name, reactionary abuse, someone hits us, says it, we may hit back. But we know it's wrong, okay? People with just CPTSD know that abuse is wrong, and they don't abuse people, and if they ever even reactionary abuse, they feel awful about it and they apologize for it. I don't see that coming from people with BPD. There's 6 forms of abuse. Physical, and this is where I'm going to get into, I'm going to use Amber Heard and Johnny Depp as examples, okay? This is something we've all seen, we can all see, you can go and look. It's gone through court, which means lots of evidence, proof, things thrown out. Physical abuse. Amber, we know, physically abused Johnny. There's proof. People, witnesses are saying it. Amber even says it herself. What a ridiculous argument that people are having. Did Amber abuse Johnny? Yes. Did Johnny abuse Amber? Yes. They abused each other. The case wasn't about that. The case was about, did Johnny physically abuse Amber? And did Amber have malicious intent when she came out and falsely claimed? Okay? But they both abused each other. Johnny knows it's wrong. Johnny says, I've never hit anybody. There's no evidence or proof that he ever has. Matter of fact, you can go back to old relationships he has, and they said he never. You can go back to old relationships Amber has, and she's been arrested for it. There is a pattern. Do you see that? Did Johnny abuse her? Verbally. Now, I don't know, right? Just what we know in the case. Johnny verbally abused Amber. Johnny knows it's wrong. Johnny admitted it's wrong. Amber says she's never abused him. Nothing. Not once. Perfect. She's perfect. Sexual abuse. I'm going to make another video about that. A lot of it has to do with betrayal and humiliation. We know Amber cheated on Johnny. There's a new video that just came out. While she was living with him in the penthouse, she had a female over she cheated on him with. There's video of it. There's other witnesses saying that they had sex with her while she was married to Johnny. There's digital abuse going online, right? Smear campaigns. I've been having somebody doing this to me for 5 years, just making up stuff, doesn't know me. That's called digital abuse. Now, if we do these things, CPTSD, we acknowledge it, we accept it, and I'm sorry, and we don't do it. People that are abusive and don't think it's wrong, they do it, and they don't apologize. They continue to do it and blame somebody else. Like the person that's been smearing me, the sociopath smearing me with 50-something videos for 5 years, has been doing it and says it's wrong, but it's okay for me. It's okay for me to do this because he's a bad person. So abuse, in their mind, is okay. It's not wrong. I'm going to continue to do it. It's okay. I have my excuses. I have my reasons. I have my proofs, my truths. Financial abuse. Almost always. It's like 99% in any abusive relationships. There's some form of financial abuse or exploitation. I watched Amber abuse him financially, massively. Suing him for $100 million for a lie. Using all his homes, and every time he's gone, she was cheating on him. I can just go on and on. Amber is perfect, even if abusive. So we have Amber and Johnny, right? Amber diagnosed with BPD and HPD, borderline personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. And Johnny, to me, my opinion, shows clear signs of CPTSD. The history says that Johnny is an abusive. The history says that Amber is abusive. Amber thinks it's not wrong. Johnny thinks abusive is wrong. I've never hit her. I would never hit a woman. No proof. No, nothing. Verbal and physical abuse in the relationship. Not Amber. Perfect. Johnny, yes. Affect. Emotional affect and how I, my emotional responses in my face and stuff like this. Amber, sitting on the stand, her affect doesn't match trauma. And then he did this, and then it was like this. No, she's, She answer questions like this. Yes. No. Turns to the jury. Very manipulative. That's not how, I mean, if you just watch her, and you guys have been traumatized, does she look like someone who's been traumatized or act like it? Not at all. Does Johnny? Totally. Just very listless. Then she abused me, hit me. I mean, that's, can't you relate to that? Amber cheats on him, had other relationships, and went right to a new person right after the relationship was over. Johnny is still alone, singing songs about never trusting anyone ever again. That's CPTSD. Amber just said the other day, I love him. I still love him. You're still abusing him. You're still on TV telling people how much he abused you and how bad of a person he is. That is abuse. We don't go and talk about other people in our lives and bad about people and stuff like this. You deal with it with him. You don't need to do that interview. You don't need to say those things, even if it was true. I love him as she's abusing him. That's a good one. Fear of abandonment. When they're fighting, hours of recordings of him saying, I'm leaving. And the whole fight was about, hey, when I abuse you and I'm physical, you can't leave. And he says, I leave because you begin to get physical. What more do you need? My God, I'm surprised Johnny actually left. A lot of people with CPTSD feel like we can't go, we can't leave. I tried to leave physically abusive relationship. I tried to leave multiple times. My abuser would rip my clothes off me, so I'm naked. I'm not kidding. She learned how to rip my jeans off me in like 2-3 seconds. She'd go damage my car, try and make it not drivable. I mean, just insane. Delusional. Let me get into public shame first. We have personal shame, or self-worth, how we feel about ourselves inside. And then we have public shame, which is good. Yeah. Do you want 300-pound people running down the street naked all day? I don't. That's gross. Thank God they're shamed. Thank God that we shame people to not do things like that. Right? And we have a sense of this in what we look like in public. And we're always cautious, right? Some of us too much. Is Amber? Not at all. How do you sit there when people are talking about you pooping on the bed and hitting him, listening to conversations, how you're talking to him and saying gross things? Doesn't bother her one single bit. When you talk about when Johnny's doing it, Johnny's head's down in shame. Don't know what it looks like to other people. I don't understand how bad I look like. God, that person's crazy. Do they know how crazy they look? No, they don't. A real lack of self-awareness. Delusional. Amber is delusional. Amber and borderlines rewrite narrative. They make false accusations. There's my story, there's your story, and then there's a borderline story that doesn't match at all. Some people call it projection. That's not projection. If I hit you and tell people you hit me, that's not projection. It's scapegoating. It's blaming. Borderlines tend to dissociate more. The more you dissociate, the more you're away from your true authentic self, the more you're delusional. Not reality. Perceived fear, like I was talking about before. Perceived fear. Amber has massive fear of abandonment. Matter of fact, I think that's what every single side of her argument was about. It wasn't about the drugs and the drinking. That's all BS. Amber drank every single day, by her own testimony. $2,000 worth of champagne every day. Amber did tons of drugs. And every time she talked about the drugs she did with Johnny, it was, oh, I tried it one time and this and that. But I just was so worried and concerned about his drug use and his drinking. Perceived fear. Perceived abandonment where it doesn't exist. Now, we can have a fear of abandonment if my last ex, my wife, picked up and took my kids one night while I was asleep and gone and I never saw them again, and then the next time I date, I'm going to have some fear of abandonment from my past experience. But not because you get a raise. Not because you lose some weight. Not because you get a pretty outfit, hair done, nails. Not because some guy likes you, asked you out. Not because, just because. You know, you ever tried to reassure a borderline? You ever tried to make a borderline feel really secure in your relationship, that you love them no matter what, you'll never leave them, nobody else knows? What a feat that is. I think I've done it momentarily. I hope, Emma, and I hope all of you, I helped you understand a little bit the difference between complex post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder. Please keep asking questions down below, and I'll try to answer all of them. But share your own experiences, share some of your own definitions and things like this, what you think, okay? Just remember that, rigid and pervasive. You'll see a borderline. You'll think they're getting a little better. Maybe trying to take a little advice. Maybe they're in therapy. But it always winds back to ground zero. Always. Typically, people with CPTSD, you'll see get better. Even if it's just time. Both CPTSD and borderline need therapy, okay? Typically, they require talk therapy, extensive CBT and DBT. Thanks again, guys. Love yourself first, okay? I'll see you guys again later. Bye.